Welcome back to The Watch. And Nathan, have you been noticing the trend that there are a lot of ugly women in video games?
Ugly, I think, is a strong word, Shad.
You know, like, you're right in a sense. Because, look, I'm not saying I'm the...
It's just funny, the people who say that are usually the ones where I'm like...
I'm not saying...
I don't ever see beautiful people calling other people ugly as much, because it's like... They don't care.
Beautiful people.
Yeah.
Usually the hot girls are always like, oh, this, you know.
Maybe in high school. Now they don't really care.
Online, I reckon online they do it a lot.
But they're immature and should grow up.
You're right in the sense that there is this oversensitivity these days to terms like ugly and fat when there is this big push to everyone is beautiful. Now, I understand a couple of sides to this, right? And this is a bit of a preamble because then we're going to... there's reasons why I think it's being adopted too much in media, and it is related to this push for the over-acceptance kind of thing, because one, accepting other people who are different and everything like that, not treating them differently because they might look differently or anything like that, might be different way and everything, absolutely, okay? The thing is, though, everyone still has their preference, okay?
Yes.
Like beauty's in the eye of the beholder and stuff like that. Like, not everyone will think I'm attractive, but to my wife...
I even just think in video games, right? I think of games like Dark Souls and even Dragon's Dogma recently. It's like people actually enjoy making ugly-looking characters.
I think that's more the exception. I think more people are interested in making good-looking, either power fantasy versions of themselves or idyllic versions of themselves, more than the ugly ones. The ugly ones are just...
I don't know. I think it just depends on people's preferences, I guess, in terms of video games.
Here is an interesting point that is related to this stuff, right? Do you know in World of Warcraft, right? The two factions, they had was it the Alliance and the Horde? I think Horde and I forget Allies. I don't know, Allies. That's the good guys, the bad guys, right? There was an imbalance of people picking the sides where people were picking the good guys 3-to-1 more than the bad guys. And one of the execs, so this is actually from good old Grums. I'm going to be mentioning Grums because he has really keen insight into gaming generally. He was like a full-on, one of the main developers with Blizzard during the World of Warcraft days and everything. And he actually needed to sit down and find out why people were not choosing the Horde as much as, and it was particularly in Korea, and WoW was big and important in Korea.
Okay, well, when you're in Korea...
why is that?
It's different.
Why is it different, Nathan?
Because Koreans are very...
They like beautiful people, Nathan.
But they also hate ugly people. Like they're like it's a problem though, to the point where they're so extreme. There's teenagers who are like getting plastic surgery in their face because
it does go pretty.
There's a level of it. Okay, they love beautiful people, but it's also like they're also ruining ugly. Well, not ruining ugly people. They're ruining beautiful people to make them ugly as well. So.
But you know where the answer goes. The reason why the Horde wasn't getting picked is because there wasn't many beautiful characters, races.
Because they're bad guys.
Yeah. So that's why they brought in the Blood Elves for the Horde. And they also balanced it out. They did like a monstrous race for the Alliance. I forget those blue kind of weird looking people. They were like dead horns and then hoof feet or something.
This is before my time. I didn't have the internet.
Okay. Well, they balanced it out and they gave monster, because I get that there are guys that like playing monstrous kind of just
the tank.
The tank kind of things. But a lot of gamers like the escapism kind of thing and having beautiful characters to look at.
Yes.
There's a reason why seeing it, if you look at through most of cinema and stuff like that, a lot of the actors usually are on the,
the good-looking
side. You can say both the men and the women, okay? And it's funny, when I was kind of listening and doing a bit of research for this topic, my wife also kind of got wind of, what I was listening to. And she had to laugh because she is playing a game at the moment, Dreamlight Valley, I think it's called. And what she loves doing she loves making a pretty character, and choosing the different dresses and everything like that is one of the main features that she's really enjoying with it. And she, as a girl, loves making a pretty avatar. And guys, and so people like pretty, like...
Yes, I think we can all agree.
Yes, we can agree on that.
Pretty... Things that are attractive, we are attracted to.
Yes.
That is fine.
Then... with the kind of, and the key is, like, this is in our kind of escapist media, where look, I know I'm an average looking guy, but when I'm, making characters that sometimes they're not, self-insert to me, sometimes it is fun to make an insert of me. I make myself buff as hell. I don't think I'll ever achieve that in real life. It's fun to have a character where I'm like this,
So I don't do that. I give myself a beard.
You give me some.
That's what I do. Facial hair that I can't grow. A very showing of what we both want in our real lives.
That's funny. All right, so we understand there's a difference between normal world and reality, but it seems like that's problematic. It's like there are people in the world that are like, no. I mean, if we don't have the real world represented, people are not going to feel seen. And it's like, hang on, most people don't care about seeing themselves in their escapist media. They either want to see an idyllic version of themselves or something awesome, beautiful, or anything like that. We get enough of the real world.
In the real world.
In the real world.
I think the other times it makes sense, but even then it's like, for example, Grand Theft Auto. They mimic the real world, but they satire it a lot. So even, I mean, it's a great example, I think, of, mimicking the real world, but also putting their own spin on it. Where I think, for example, fantasy, like, you don't need to have realistic looking people.
Exactly.
It's fantasy. I mean, look, Baldur's Gate, they've got elves and people with slanted art, all sorts of weird stuff. Like,
But no, we need to see the real world races represented. Otherwise, people will not feel seen and as races. If not, if you don't have the right representation, it's like, hang on, we don't want the real world. We get enough of that. And so, also in terms of representation, it depends on the world setting and everything. We'll probably talk about this more, but people are complaining at the Shogun TV show. There's no black people in it. It's like, hang on, there's a lot of Asian people. I don't care. And so, it's the whole. And it comes from, I feel, from pretty narcissistic kind of attitude that I have to see myself in it. The other side to it, it's funny, there's actually multiple sides, and so it's like, all right. But this one, right? I wonder if people are worried that because people like watching beautiful people, sexy people, whatever, in their games and everything, that would affect them finding beauty in the real world. Which it's almost the similar type of thing as, violence in gaming will cause you to be violent in the real world. Indulging in enjoying pretty beautiful people in the real game means that you could never be attracted to a regular woman. But I actually think feminists, very extreme ones, and this goes back to the original big Gamergate controversy. One of the biggest kind of, attacks against gamers in the Gamergate thing was that gamers are all sexist. Look at all these objectified women in their games. It's all just male gaze, and they're sexist for doing it, and and we need to make it look more realistic and not sexified and everything. They don't care about the men being objectified, but the women. That's the problem, right? And I think it comes from. It comes from a lot of things. I think a lot of the crazy feminists that were projecting this were actually projecting that they were upset that because they weren't as pretty as the real world games and everything. They want it reflecting, a new standard of beauty, which is what they look like, which is on the general kind of standards of beauty. They're not supermodels, let's just say that, right? And notice how I try to be a bit diplomatic when I say it, because I know in the real world, right, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. When you fall in love with someone, they become the most beautiful person in the world, and their physical attraction plays a part, but we're not. It's like, guys, we understand that difference. It doesn't affect our judgment in the real world, and it's funny because I have come across, a group of like a mentality where standards are too high, both for men and women. Where women thinks a guy needs to be so tall and they need to have these types of features, chiseled abs and all that, and that's too narcissistic, too high standards, and guys have that as well. But it's easy to just like, course correct, all right. And the thing that causes that, I do not really find video games to be the cause of it, necessarily media either, because I find narcissistic people are narcissistic anyway. Right?
Yes.
You think these people who have these standards will not see like hyper exaggerated beauty standards in the real world, the models and stuff like that? Do you think we do not come across what people consider knockouts in the real world, that then they might have a preference to really more exceptional standards? People who generally have those unrealistic standards will have them anyway. And most people understand the difference. I've never seen an impact.
Well, I think it's also understanding that, I think it would become an issue if all you did was play video games with beautiful people and you never went outside and talked with people and had normal interactions. I think if you're playing games moderately and also going outside and talking with people and you understand the separation, that's fine. It's when you get things like if you just play WoW 2 hours a day, or if you're just always on Roblox or whatever. VR chat, I think, is also an issue because people are now getting to the point now where it's like, if you're not a cute anime girl, I'm not attracted to you. Like that's obviously a problem.
Yeah.
But people who are sensible will actually realize that there's separation to it, and we can enjoy our media in terms of it being something attractive and something to aspire to, but also not having unrealistic expectations, expecting, my partner to be the same as like Wonder Woman.
Yeah, exactly. But because that's the thing, even our partners, even ourselves, when we actually do enjoy the escapist media, we like seeing an idyllic version. We like seeing pretty characters and everything. And that's the same with most people. And it's so bizarre that modern gaming this way, it started out, right, that accusations of pointing this out was you're just a conspiracy theorist. I remember when they changed Aloe in Horizon Zero Dawn. People were like, what are you talking about?
It's just looking more realistic now.
Yeah,
it's a ray tracing.
Exactly. There's not a real change. And so many people I even saw trying to gaslight. They didn't change the face. And I'm like, I can see both faces. There's a big change. They made Aloe look like a man. Is that her name, by the way?
I think it's
Aloy?
Aloy or something. Aloy. Yeah.
I don't care.
I'm sorry, it's not a good game.
Well, it's funny. I've heard that the first one was good. Is that not good?
Okay, I retracting my it's a good game, just not for me.
Okay, because when I see game companies do this type of pandering, it shows me where their ideological where they land ideologically and stuff like that. And it also is a red flag for what they will promote, support, and push in the future. And so when I saw that change, I was like, I was interested in playing Horizon Zero Dawn, the first one. Not even going to take a second glance at it now. And it's not because one, it would be more enjoyable if Halo was more pretty, right? That's just the base standard that I think we've established. People get that. And having, why do you think Tomb Raider was so popular? Like,
It was them polygons, they were in the right spots.
But the better graphics got. They filled out those polygons. They did.
They used that bevel and they just smoothed it all out.
Yes.
Got them curves going.
Nice hand movements.
Hourglass.
That's what you were shaping, right?
Yeah. Nothing else.
And so people, like, it's so normal. People have liked, idyllic, pretty, protagonists. And Horizon Zero Dawn, you've got, it started off somewhat pretty, but then they's like, no, we're going to make her look more mannish, fill out the drawer, make her look like Nikocado Avocado. Have you seen that comparison?
The comparisons,
it's just like, it was overt, it was obvious, but people did try and gaslight. It's not really happening, all right? But now we've seen example after example after example.
Well, I think especially when the devs of these teams came out and then were attacking gamers for being like, so what if she looks ugly? That's when it's like, all right, so now you're admitting it, that you're doing it on purpose.
Yeah, and this is not us trying to criticize people in the real world, because look at me, right? I'm not, like, if I saw a protagonist and had a dad bod, I was supposed to be this Conan the Barbarian type of thing, like...
But even then, I feel like dad boards are sought after as well. People like the...
A bit. And look, we understand there's a different beauty standard between men and women, right? We get that.
I mean, even then, it's like, we can have these games with more realistic looking characters. What you're doing is you're putting it into fantasy worlds or places where obviously your market, it doesn't make sense to have that.
Here is one of the other things that we need to push back against when they say these characters are unrealistic. Because, hang on, there are people in the real world that have these body shapes.
Yes.
It's not actually unrealistic. It's just more exceptional, out of the ordinary. But in terms of being the ripped, Chad bod, right? That's actually possible for anyone who works hard enough, okay?
And doesn't eat and just, protein.
Okay. That's actually more attainable. And guys don't have an issue. When they see, Conan the Barbarian, a lot of guys respond with, I need to get to the gym.
It's funny that, isn't it? Because when you see giant muscular people, you don't necessarily go, oh, I can never attain that. But you might do 20 push-ups that night because you're like, you know what? I need to take better care of myself.
Exactly. It encourages you to get better. Now, in terms of the female beauty standard, everyone can lose weight and be a bit more thinner and attractive. In terms of sizes of certain features, that's a bit harder to...
But even then with faces and stuff, it's hard to reconstruct your face without actually going in dangerously to surgery and stuff.
That is an interesting thing, because there is a more broader or a less strict kind of view of male facial beauty as female facial beauty. There is a kind of bone structure that people tend to find quite attractive. By the way, this is the other thing. Like, most women do have that beauty. Like, usually when it's slimming down a bit. And
But even then, it's like you got to work with what you've got.
Yeah, exactly.
There's certain people who, if you're just a certain way, then it's going to make you look good. If you get a certain haircut, you might not look as nice because the haircut does not. That's just how life works.
Yeah. And so some of these changes, right, when they make these protagonists or the main female characters in video games and stuff, they aren't making them look like haggard, witches or whatever. Some are like just more normal looking people, but for a idealized protagonist character, right, where you really want to just look, awesome and beautiful, can be a big contrast. And I think one of the most condemning changes that they did was with Mary Jane in the Spider-Man game. Mary Jane is meant to be a supermodel. Okay, and it has a narrative purpose in the story where Peter Parker is this nerdy guy, and it's supposed to be the whole cliche, this hot girl is so far out of his league, right, that he can never get with her. And then he actually has a chance with her, yet being Spider-Man gets in the way and constantly ruins it, and it creates this really important conflict and dynamic. Great power comes great responsibility. What is he willing to sacrifice to do the right thing and help save people? And he'll even be willing to sacrifice the relationship with this hot girl that so many people would love to, hook up with, right? And that's important. So Mary Jane being attractive is important. And so to change her to make her looking like an average woman, right? And not even that, because you've seen the comparison where it looks like, was it one of the marketing managers or writers in the game studio? Looks uncannily similar to the Mary Jane, like she was used as the model.
They even had like the face model actress and then compared it to the game, and the actress looked more attractive than the final model.
Exactly. And it's like they claimed that they based this model on this actress when there was someone working in the game in their company, right? That's almost a 1-to-1. And then they're like, no, we didn't model her off of that. It's like, we have eyes, okay? But the thing is that even the model looked more unattractive than the woman that she looks so much like.
The unrealistic, or the thing that isn't real, looked more realistic than the realistic thing.
It was... Hang on, what?
So the model looked more realistic.
The video game model?
Realistic.
Oh, because... Okay, that's what you're saying. I missed the quote.
Realistic. Because... Unlike the realistic model.
Okay. I missed the sarcasm. I was so they wanted to make it more realistic, and they ended up not making it. And so people have been, I think, trying to hide behind the defense that if you criticize the look of this Mary Jane, you are criticizing this real life person, and you're a terrible person for calling him ugly. And this, by the way, people are allowed to have their preferences. Every single woman in the world is butt ugly to me because they're not my wife, and it's my friggin' right to say so. It's funny, we reacted to Troy on EFAP movies, and they were like saying Helen of Troy, they were like, she's and the reason why she's not my wife, and I purposely choose, one, because I love my wife and she becomes the most beautiful person in the world, and so therefore all other women are friggin' butt ugly, and it's my right to say so as a husband. But that's the thing, people are entitled to their preferences. They can say, sorry, not attracted to you. And if they want a video game protagonist to be more attractive and then that would encourage them to play, they're allowed to say it as well. There's this kind of shaming about preferences for straight men now. That if straight men say, well, I want to be, have an attractive, how fat phobic or sexist or whatever you are. And by the way, the whole fat thing as well, right? People can be attractive in a range of sizes, right? But going so far to, the whole fat acceptance movement where you see people that are so unhealthy that they probably will die from complications related to that. Being overweight isn't good, and I say that as an overweight person, but understanding that helps me try and be more healthy than not. And the whole fat acceptance thing is really bad for people's health. And to try and then convince, you must accept this look to be attractive, it's like, no. One, it's actually not a biological natural instinct. There is a natural instinct for people to be attracted to healthy-looking people. And it's the whole kind of, men they find, certain features attractive because there is those hips, childbearing kind of thing. There's almost like a biological thing about size in the chest region, right? Associated with also being able to nurse babies and stuff like that. There are biological things connected with our beauty standards, right? And being healthy and fit is one of those things as well. And to try and shame people into being attracted to larger weights and everything like that is not right. This is like, hang on, there's some standard beauty. This isn't all just social construct thing. There's biological components to it, and people are allowed to be attracted what they want in terms of their, features in the opposite sex is what I'm saying. Okay. Of course, there are certain attractions that are illegal. It should always be, but we're talking about normal kind of relationships here, right? And yeah, like if you're attracted to red hair over blonde hair, or blonde hair, brunette, certain eye features, certain shapes of noses, or whatever like that, people are freaking entitled to do it. And the whole you must find, overweight people attractive. It's like, no, we don't. I know I'm more attractive when I'm less, I'm thinner than when I am larger. I hold myself to the same standard, and trying to push that onto others is just social engineering, sophistic bullcrap, right? Mm-hmm. But they're trying to push it in games because, again, we've seen that trend. Now, the question that hangs in the air about, them doing all these is why? Why are they making, and when because we've listed some examples, but it's broad, there are so many examples of unattractive, women in video games as it's now undeniable. Mm-hmm. It's very clear. Even in sequels, so yeah, you got Spider-Man, you got Horizon Zero Dawn, the females in Mortal Kombat. You saw the trailer in Fable where the protagonist looked not only but ugly. This female just looked like a man.
I think even just their facial expression, they always did such repulsive and unhappy faces.
Yeah, it was so ugly to be repulsive. Like, I'm looking at a man here, and here is the shocking reality. People might get offended by this, Nathan, right? Straight men are not attracted to men. Don't cancel me over that. I know that can be a shocking thing. By the way, you think I might be... People have tried to attack us for stating such blatant, simple truths as that. Okay? That straight men find sexual expressions of things that they're not attracted to, like two gay men kissing, they find that repulsive because they're not attracted to men. The thing is, they're attracted to women. But do you reckon they would criticize a gay man who finds two women kissing repulsive? I don't think they would have criticized that.
At this day and age, I don't even know what level are we going to be okay with stuff and not okay with stuff.
Yeah, we're in crazy world, right?
Yeah.
So the question is why? And Grums had an interesting thing to say about this. Mm-hmm. He's a game developer, and he's talked to other game developers, and one of these developers told him something. And it is something I have suspected, but I didn't have any... Well, I have a couple of suspicions. This was one of them. There's another couple of suspicions that I think there's truth to as well, right? I think they hire a lot of feminist writers. Mm-hmm. Okay? In these gaming industries. And these feminist writers are very insecure. They want to be perceived as being attractive. They could probably do a lot more with what they have. Yeah, try and lose weight. Why are so many feminists overweight, Nathan?
I'm being very careful with my words, but it's even just the way they dress.
I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of the outspoken ones. Yeah.
Just the fashion
of... The fashion sense.
The fashion of progressives aren't the most flattering. Well said.
Yeah. Diplomatically
that's the nicest way I can put it.
You can put it, right? You are absolutely right, okay? It's like they go out of their way to try and be more repulsive to men because they don't need no men or anything like that, or traditional beauty. There are some, feminists that actually did go out of their way to still, which was weird because then they were criticizing, all these unfair beauty standards, yet they still put on makeup and all that stuff to try and make themselves look more presentable. Yet they're criticizing the male gaze, and it's like, but you're leaning into that and stuff. But then you see a lot of them just seem to reject it entirely. Yet there is such insecurity laced with it that's like, then they want to shame others for not finding them attractive. I'm beautiful no matter what, and you should find me attractive. And then it feels like it's like a self-insert thing with these games, that they want these games to reflect themselves. Which is a very common thing with feminist writing. They want to inject themselves into the story, make themselves... There's a whole girl boss thing where they write like these characters are like themselves, and then they write, scenes where it's just their basically, wet dreams of being able to tear down a man and tell them what for. They wish they could do that in the real world, and then everyone, praise them for it. And so that seemed like it was a extension of that. Mm-hmm. That was one suspicion I had. There's another suspicion that Grums mentions that I was like, Because look, he says this is what a game developer legitimately said this was why. They were making the women look more ugly to not offend the trans community. I did not tell Nathan that was the reason. I wanted to get his honest reaction on camera. That has so many implications, doesn't it?
Yes. Okay, that's what someone has said.
That's what someone has said. Because there is a kind of similarity between a lot of these less attractive looking females in games. They all look more masculine or rather mannish. Have a look at that Fable character. I mean, that jaw on Mary Jane.
Yeah, that's news to me. No.
You didn't know that?
No. Well, I wasn't. You didn't tell me, so I didn't know what I was getting to.
I kind of suspected this. Didn't have anything to. But now we have a game developer saying that's one of the reasons why. And there are implicative layers upon layers of this, right? Which doesn't reflect, because you'd think like a trans character, right? A person who is trans playing a character depicting themselves, right? If they want to live their life as, presenting as the opposite sex in games, they can do that perfectly to the point where no one would be able to tell. Like if you were someone who wanted to identify as the opposite gender and you have a character creator and you could make yourself depicted perfectly as the opposite gender, you would think that would be their preference. Why would you want to depict yourself in such a way where it's obvious that you're trans? And when it's obvious that someone is trans is when it's obvious that they're not the opposite gender, that they're not passing, that they're...
Yes. I mean, and then there's the whole discussion with gender. Maybe they don't want to be a guy or a girl. They want to be...
That is a very small minority in the whole, like the whole non-binary thing is much small. Most trans people just want to be the opposite gender completely. Do you know there is a thing in the trans community called passing privilege?
Yeah.
You've heard of that?
Yeah.
So for our
uninitiated,
our lucky,
welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Our lucky viewers who never heard of this, we're gonna let you know what this is. It is when a trans person is able to convincingly present themselves as the opposite gender to the point that no one can tell that they're actually trans, all right? And that tends to be the exception, the big exception to the norm in the trans community. For most trans people, it's very hard for them to present themselves so well as the opposite gender that it's not, and so they call it passing privilege, that a trans person that can actually pass as the opposite gender has a privilege, and they should admit their privilege and give more sympathy to trans people who can't pass, right? The reason why I bring that up, right, if this is actually a privilege that most of the trans community acknowledges and is an issue, wouldn't that mean they would have an issue with these game characters, these female game characters that look like men, because they're depicting them as trans people that are not passing them. They're making them look more like men. And it seems like even trans people would want them to actually look like women.
I think we're getting...
I'm so confused, Nathan!
Exactly. It's muddying the waters so much that it's like, okay, can we just go back to like them not being attractive to the point where... Too many layers. Too complicated.
But that seems to be one of the reasons. And it's like, hang on. If they're doing that to make trans people feel well, it's like, but that's you actively depicting them in an unflattering way, which is you acknowledging you think that they don't look attractive, and so you're trying to be more inclusive when you actually have this very strong implication saying that you don't think they are.
That's usually how it ends, isn't it? They try to be inclusive and welcoming.
And then they end up doing the exact opposite, right? Where I think most trans people, when they're playing a game and want to represent, they get to have that privilege in the game. And so that means they wouldn't want to see non-passing trans people reflected, but that's one of the reasons why they're doing it. It's so odd and bizarre.
And I just like these comments of like, we want these characters like this so we can represent this entire community. I am sure, because I've talked with people who are in these groups, they all have different opinions on certain things. They're all unique individuals. It's funny how they want to talk about a whole group.
It goes into that pandering thing because when you pander, like you consider that whole group as one kind of monolith that are all in lockstep and everything like that. As the whole left, like there are a lot of people on the left that agree with us and hate the woke stuff, right? There are trans people that watch our content, okay, and agree with us, all right, and they are not on board with this whole, both on, pushing pronouns to unbelievable aggression to the point where it's like you're a Nazi if you don't do it, and same with like in video games and stuff like that. And if game developers do this, right? One, it's pandering, and it seems like a lot of trans people are not even on board. If they had the opportunity to pass properly and convincingly, they would take it. That's one of the purposes of them wanting to try and transition, right? And then to then reflect video games where they're not passing correctly, or they just like they get offended at that. Like I found it so funny, Hogwarts Legacy, right? They had a trans character in it that they looked like the opposite gender, but when they spoke, they did not sound like a woman. And I'm like, what are they trying to say by that, right? It seems like this is...
Well, it's funny because it's an actual person that has transitioned that they had play that character.
Oh, okay, well, that might be also why as well.
So, that was a realistic character.
And if pandering to such a small minority group, right, what do you think the results are going to be? What's the most larger predominant gaming audience? Like it's men. Men play gaming more often, and I'm talking hardcore. Not yes, there's more mobile games and stuff, right? But hang on, do they honestly think straight men that are attracted to women, and men are attracted to attractive women as a normal default, right? What do you think the reaction? If you act like you have any way to make the women characters look like men.
I don't think they think that though, Shad. I think they're just
so dumb.
They're caught in their own little world with their mission for what they're going to change. They don't even think about the actual market value. We've seen this with Suicide Squad. They do all this stuff to change the world, and when everyone hates it, no one plays it anymore. They kind of go, but why? I made the game that I wanted to make. It's like, yeah, you did, but guess what? Not everyone wants to play it.
Exactly, and that's what we're seeing. And the rejection is happening more and more. Okay, and look, I didn't even know about them wanting to change or anything like that. I'm a guy, when I'm playing escapist media, I want awesome buff-looking dudes and beautiful women because that's fun. Okay, and so when I saw that they made Aloy look more ugly, it was the red flag of where they're going. And so gamers are actually seeing those red flags now to the point where if you are celebrating one woke element, they're like, screw that, I'm not even going to give it a try. And that's great because it's sending a message. The right message is that we just want good games that celebrate traditional values and everything, and don't shame gamers for wanting to be attracted to women. That was the big pushback in the whole first Gamergate thing. It was shaming men for not being, which we'll probably talk a little bit more about. Shaming men for not being attracted to ugly women, basically. Right? And, women out there who think they are not up to the model standard that video games and everything like that. The sad thing would be if they take away the think that they'll never be able to get a good man. It's like, no, that's not the case. Look at me, all right? I'm an average looking guy. Like, you will attract a person by being a beautiful person. Vastly more.
Looks are only part of it. Your personality is also important.
Yeah.
So if you've got a trash personality, it doesn't matter how good you look.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I asked, like, will they change? I think some will change because we've seen, look at how successful, what is that game that has the really sexy woman in it now?
I forgot the name, but I know
it's the Korean one.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. We've done a video on it. Now the name has escaped me. Blade, no, something, so, I don't know. Stellar Blade, is it Stellar Blade?
Yeah.
Did I get it? And that was actually, well, they said it's based off of real woman, but anyway, like, it's just shocking. Like, this would have been graphics have been modernized, right? But this game was made like in the 90s, right, or early 2000s. Okay, with the graphics level that were available at the time, it would have just looked like another normal game. It's only getting attention now because it's so out of the ordinary that they dared put a sexy woman in it. It's just like, have we gone that off the rails? But hey, if they want to do that fight, they'll fail, and The companies that are going to be so brave to dare put attractive women in games, they'll succeed. That's what's going to happen. Because you can't shame gamers to being attracted to things that they're not attracted to. That's the result. And the reasons they do it are just bonkers. It shows that they are completely disconnected from their audience. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments. And as always, stay on watch.